Hey guys, sorry I didn't realize I was on air. You got to watch the back of my house instead of anything exciting. I'm really sorry. And now I've got my sound on. What? I can tell you right away that it's been a bit of a day already because of some technical issues. That was the transition I meant to do. But now it's here. Anyway, sorry you guys, sorry to keep you waiting. I thought I had set up the correct transition, and then I went to get my coffee. And instead you just got to watch the boring bits of the back of my house and watch me come and go. So that must have been really exciting. Oh, OBS is fun. So, hello guys, how are you doing? I have the sound on. That's the most important thing that I've learned that I often mess up. But yeah, I just normally put the show on with the warm-up thing, but it's on the wrong window. It's all very... So I've had a morning. I have had a morning. Let me just get a little coffee in and I'll explain. And so normally I get going about 45 minutes before the show, and that's enough time. But for some reason this week OBS didn't want to work. It wouldn't show the background display. And by that I mean this bit here, I'll transition. The part in the window in the corner was just not connecting, like it wasn't finding, here's another version of it, right? It was just not finding the display. And so I spent about 20 minutes just trying to get the display to show back up, which just was about opening OBS and shutting it again after I tried several different things. But as a consequence, it's thrown my game, and it's put everything, you got to see the back of the show. So there you go. Anyway, hello everyone, good morning. This is Kristi, did I mention? I'm Kristi, and this is my Sunday live show. I do this on Sundays, and I do it, I know people in the States don't wait up for this. Don't stay up for it. It's really not worth, you know, screwing up your sleep schedule over a live show. Though now I realize with my cold, I'm going to have to get my Kleenex. Hold on. Yep. All right. This is going to be necessary. If it's not hay fever in the spring or in the summer or colds in the winter or whatever else in the fall, but my nose is always constantly... Anyway, so yes, it's been a fun morning, and getting everything sorted, getting my coffee sorted, so now we can get on with the show. Alright, so, hey Bully Hunter 77, first time watching live, hello. So why don't I give you something exciting, something worth turning up for, rather than this nonsense garbage that we've had so far. Alright, well, part of the reason I was telling you about my OBS problems was to say also, by way of it, I haven't had too much of a chance to prepare things. I have items in my head that I want to work on, but as a consequence, now I'm going to have to talk and broadcast while also finding content to show on the show. So I might look a little more distracted than usual. But we can start with a couple things that require absolutely no kind of... a supporting documentation. That would be, first, if you haven't had a chance, Kevin Logan did a stream last night, and I'll just find it here on my subscriptions because I want to get everybody's name right. But yes, he had a chat with Ren Famous, and they were talking about Comicsgate, one of the Comicsgate guys, Ethan Van Sciver, perhaps is his name. That guy sounds like a real jerk. I got caught up in it simply because I guess with the happy hour people tagged me into exchanges about Kevin. So the basic background is Comicsgate seems to have attracted a lot of the same types of jerks who worked on Gamergate. And they use the exact same tactics of bullying and brigading and making up lies about you, and then, you know, talking about you and organizing around it. Rather than engaging with the topics, they tend to attack the people. That sounds a lot like Gamergate. Don't actually engage with Anita's critique and take it down point by point. Just, you know, make video games up of punching her, because that's how you win an argument. That's real intellectual power there. Anyway, these guys, this Ethan Van Sciver, he was on, and because maybe I get... you know, Kevin and I are in the happy hour, I end up getting tagged into it. And that's fine. It's not like I'm upset that I got tagged into a bunch of internet drama. It's not been the first time. I'm sure it won't be the last time. But as a consequence, this guy came on my radar. So this morning when I got up, I saw like over 70 messages in my Twitter feed. A lot of them are back and forth on this. And I can see the tone, and I recognize the tone immediately. whoever this EVS dude is, Ethan Van Shiver, his fans sound indistinguishable from Bearing fans or Sargon fans. We're talking about that sort of like low quality mental processing effort kind of people. The people who don't really think about stuff. For instance, someone posted some comment, I guess probably from a Kiwi Farms, it didn't look like Reddit, it looked like something from Kiwi Farms, complaining about Kevin and mentioning Thunderfoot. I was like, dude, how old do you have to, like, what is this, from 2015? You need to go back into the vaults to 2015 to find someone complaining about Kevin? And they're talking about Thunderfoot? Who talks about Thunderfoot anymore? You know? So that's the quality, if you want to put, of level of engagement that I see from Comicsgate. Kevin had that stream on last night. You should go check it out. And so Ren Famous sounds really cool. She's a woman speaking her truth about, you know, her perspective, and basically, you know, getting bullied by a series of dude bros who are like, we want comic games to be all about boobs and white men being heroes. And that seems to me that was ultimately what Gamergate was about. It's, here is a genre where I see myself, or this is white dudes, I see myself as the hero of the story because the hero of the story looks like me, and the story is also set up in a way to show me lots of boobies, which I like. So if we, you know, not understanding that that's a marketing demographic, that's a slice of reality, it doesn't represent all the possible markets that exist. And when they make games with, you know, not that perspective, and the screaming, the entitlement screaming about the need for boobs in video games is, or comics or whatever else. No, everyone must be a straight white man. Everyone must be Luke Skywalker. Otherwise, I'm being help, I'm being repressed. So go check that out. That was a good stream. Other stuff that happened yesterday, since the Friday Hangout, was that Sargon got another Twitter account banned. You're so dumb, Carl. Carl, seriously. I mean, I remember when I first came onto YouTube and I was sort of intimidated by I know it's hard to imagine, but it was because, and I realize this now watching how impotently he's behaving without a crowd of trolls behind him, the force that Sargon carried with coming out of Gamergate and going into his beat up on women on the left and humiliate men on the left phase, and now he's drifting into, I don't know, self-irrelevance. But he was a powerhouse not because he made good arguments, not because he was the best at doing research and had really hot, interesting takes that no one had come up with. It was because he was a bully. That was his only power on the internet, was that he had accrued a following of people with very little ethical or moral scruples, who were fine with bullying other people into silence and then taking bullying other people into silence as a win. And that's just not how, like, the real world works. I guess in some places it does work like that, but not here. And as what Carl did, and I'd experienced this and a lot of people experienced it, was he would have his, what did he have, like 80,000 followers or something? He had a huge following on Twitter with his first account that he had built up and accrued. And he would just throw out one tweet, and his fans would treat it like, you know, hyenas going after a bit of scrap meat. They would all just jump into it. And Carl could put his hands up and go, oh, this has nothing to do with me. I'm just making a comment. I don't control my fans. Then he got his account taken away. That didn't do with me. I'm just making a comment. Shut up, Kristi. I'm trying to find the comments so I can watch what you guys are saying too. So then he got his second account and tried again, you know, built it up now to, he tried to build it up, but then Twitter instituted the rules, the harassment rules, the new engagement rules, right? It was about 2017, and that was a bit clunky and wonky, and I'm not saying the system is perfect, but at least they had some way of holding people accountable. And as a consequence, Carl got booted off again because of his bad behavior. And now he's tried to evade his ban by having several, I like this phrase, ban evasion accounts. It's a really nice, it's otherwise really hard to describe what it is that he's doing. So the ban evasion accounts, he's got multiple ones. There's his Mountain Man one. There was his not Sargon one. He's got a couple other ones. I don't know if anyone's keeping a running list of all of his ban evasion accounts. But the one that he seemed to favor was his at not Sargon. You know, like, oh, it's Sargon and not Sargon. Really clever that way. And the at not Sargon was starting to build up a following, and what I found, this was interesting from my perspective, was that for a while on his new account, I had more followers than Sargon did. I got like between 7,000 and 8,000. I get a lot of hate troll followers, so I what do you call it? Soft block. I ghost a lot of trash that comes into following. Occasionally I'll like see a really weird retweet in my feed, and I'll click on it, and some really asshole-ish person is following. I'm just like, block, unblock, bye-bye. But in those cases, when Sargon was still building up his at not Sargon Twitter account, he would try to talk smack to me, and I would reply, and my replies would get more responses than his initial post would, because of the imbalance of power. And at that point, what I started to do was, it made sense before in terms of the way that Sargon needs an audience. He needs an audience for validation, and he replaces validation for content. He was sending me things, you know, and trying to get his followers to come and harass me, and I would just start blocking them, because I mean, if people are going to come and attack me as their opening salvo, yeah, I'm going to block you anyway. But it then occurred to me that when Sargon's accounts are really small like that, it's actually pretty easy to identify who his fanboys are by just clicking on in Twitter who likes his tweets. So, I mean, I actually had been doing this tactic with Bering too for a long time, and reporting his shit when he was being abusive, and he's left me alone. So he learned his lesson, but Carl just can't. But maybe he's starting to twig a little bit. When now Carl does the thing of, sorry, I'm just going to minimize the screen in case it's taking up bandwidth, which we don't need. If he tries to tag me into something, like when he tries to tag Mike Suchberry into something, don't block Carl, because you want to see what he's saying, and also I laugh at how dumb he is. The more I interact with him, the more I realize how profoundly ignorant the man is. So I want to keep watching how stupid he is and see if he ever actually starts to, you know, read books and think. But when he's got a small account, what I would recommend people do, if you are somebody that Carl likes to target in order to bait his followers and generate some hate, you know, like hate attention around you, because that's what he does instead of thinking, then mass block people who like his tweet, and mass block people who reply with shitty comments to you back, from who had been directed there, obviously from Carl. Because if you mass block all of the people that he wants to get attention from, his followers, that's what he's using you for, is he's holding you up as bait for his followers. And if they can't see your shit, and they can't, sorry, you can't see your stuff, I'm trying to swear less on this show than the happy hour, and they can't interact with you, then there's no incentive for him to pick on you. You take away his audience, and you take away his power. So don't block Sargon, I would say, in his new accounts, because he's got, like I said, multiple ones. Just start mass blocking only those people who engage with him. Because the other thing you have to remember is, if you mass block everyone who follows him, a lot of people hate follow Carl because he's so dumb. So that's a waste of your time. What you can do, a better use of your time, is to let Carl be the bait and put out a tweet about you, a bait tweet about you, and then just see all the little trolls that come to feed, and then like whack-a-mole, block, 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 till it's just you and Carl again on Twitter. Just the two of you talking back and forth. And when you change the power dynamics on him like that, he's been leaving me alone and picking on Mike Suchberry, who doesn't deserve it. But that, coming back to the point, so there's a conspiracy on the Carl side of things that his banning has to do with some, I don't know. Okay, so V gossips a lot. And I also see other things on Twitter, so it's not like it's just private conversations or anything. But there's this conspiracy that's, I don't know, something to do with Mike Suchberry and people who are brigading him and harassing him. But that seems to be the Carl side of the story, that there was some Twitter conspiracy to block a bunch of people who were harassing other people, as if that's a conspiracy as opposed to just enforcing the terms of service. But what seems to be the case is that Carl, in the pronoun who game, he, which he am I talking about? The thing that got him kicked off his @NotSargon account, kicked off Twitter, was he'd gone on a transphobic rant. And several, I saw at least 2 people who had posted reports reporting the results of the filing a complaint process on Twitter. Our words are just hard today. Sometimes I wish I could just like say 4 or 5 words and you guys would just follow my thinking. Because do you ever have this? Like there's a point I want to make, but then I have to say a cumbersome number of words in order to make that point to set it up. Like, oh God, do I actually have to think? Can I just like project my mind? Oh no, I have to say these words and make sure everyone understands. Okay. So Carl had gone on a transphobic rant, and there's a lot of people who support trans people. Like, I didn't report him, but I would have reported his ass. I don't have a problem reporting people, and I'll tell you that I report you. If you violate the terms of service, I will report you. That's just how, that's like reporting a crime. It's not a bad thing to report a violation of a rule, right? That's why we have consequences and processes. But anyway, it was transphobic, and a bunch of people reported the transphobia. And what the report, so when they submitted the snapshots of saying, thank you for reporting, we found this account to be in violation. The violation was running multiple accounts for abusive behavior, or it was linking this idea of running multiple accounts and engaging in an abusing pattern of behavior. That implies to me that what was being reported was people were saying, this is the banned account of Sargon of Akkad, who is doing a ban evasion account, and he's organizing harassment or being a harasser. So that was fun. That was it was rather amazing to watch yet another account go down. And this is the other thing too. So people are gonna whine, oh, bleh bleh, poor Carl. He can't speak his anti-trans. He can't put transphobia on Twitter. Like, no, you can't. I mean, this is a conversation I had with V. You guys agree to the terms of service when you create your account, and the terms of service says you can't use slurs and hateful language. So if you say, I don't care what Twitter's going to say, I'm going to say whatever I want about trans women and trans men. Like, well, you can do that, but you're going to get your account shut down. And I'm not going to feel bad for you. And I'm not going to feel like your freedom of speech was infringed upon. Because again, you were a consensual participant when you engaged in the terms of service agreement that Twitter set out. You said, yes, in order to access your services, I agree to these specific conditions. And then you break them and they take your account away. Why would I feel sorry for you? Seriously. Like, go to Gab then, as someone pointed out. If you're so upset about Twitter, Carl, why aren't you on Gab? I mean, that is the free speech hub place, right? So why aren't you spending all your time there? Oh wait, because it's really hard to get validation from bullies when there's nobody to pick on Gab, right? Is that what it is, Carl? I think that's what it is. Right. So that happened, the Kevin thing happened, the Carl thing happened, and what I thought we could do next is, if I bring it up and all the screens work correctly, is talking, yes, I think that running that video in the background is always a problem. So let's talk a little bit about a racist, big old racist. Should we do that? And I know normally I do my philosophy of science, but I hadn't had a chance to find a little section, unless I could just pick one at random. Oh, this sounds interesting. All right, let's do this. We'll go back. Go back to camera. Oh, that's fine. I hadn't actually transitioned to the next scene. I need more coffee before I start these shows. Right, so this one is from the chapter Science, Nature, and Society from Philosophy of Social Science. Oh, Gary Edwards! All right, I have to write these things down. That's it. Oh, I think I'll find this. Yes, all right. So, you know, I was saying to, I said to Kevin on the Friday hangout, and I managed to miss only one joke, I think, last time. But when I'm doing a show with Kevin, oftentimes he'll interrupt me, or he'll say something and I'll want to make a point, and he'll keep talking. And so my brain has to divide between holding on to the point that I want to make and listening to Kevin. And what it ends up being is, in order to remember what I want to say, I have to process when Kevin is speaking, but not necessarily everything he says, because I'm waiting for him to stop so I can make my point, which is, it's just like hard to do. And you're like, you know, oh yeah, what do you think, Kristi? You're like, oh, I had a point, but I've already forgotten it. So I was trying to take notes. Sorry, you can't see that. I was trying to take notes during the show, and I only missed one of his jokes, I think, last Friday night. But yeah, Gary Edwards. Oh, so we're going to come on to that. We're going to come on to that. So anyway, this is from the chapter Science, Nature, and Society. In the subtitle heading, and I'll just do like two paragraphs. The reflexive turn, constructing nature and society. By the early 1990s, the followers of the Strong program in the sociology of science and related approaches, this is people who are taking a very observational-based approach, were facing criticisms from a new direction. Previously enmeshed in debates with realists and rationalists over their relativism about, I guess, Strong program. I guess I should have known what the Strong program was. I knew, but I didn't. But anyway, let's just continue on. I'll check that for next week. Their relativism about scientific knowledge. They were now criticized for their supposedly unquestioningly realist assumptions about society. There were, in fact, two distinct lines of criticism. According to one, the sociologists of science, in their focus on controversies and talk of strategies, interests, and sides, and so on, were committed to a decisionist model of social life as constructed by conscious rational choices of agents. Right, so rational choice theory talks about our ability to use our reason to optimize our outcomes. That's a very nutshell approach to it that can be applied to politics or to economics. Like literally, rational choice theory comes from economics into the social sciences. Against this, critics emphasize the importance of studying the embedded routines and cultural contexts of scientific practice. So what are the ways in which science itself has cultures and norms, and ways that routines are influencing the structure of the creation of knowledge? However, a more fundamental line of criticism noted the inconsistency involved in the Strong program's systematic skepticism about the reality claims made by natural scientists, while accepting as real and given the sociological variables in terms of which scientific controversies were being explained. All right, so yes, apologies for not knowing what the Strong program was here, but there is here saying you are saying on the one hand that nature has things that we have to question and reflect upon, but on the other hand you're saying that there are sociological variables that have similar explanatory power. Continuing, consistency. Yes, consistency could only be restored. Let me try that one again. Consistency could be restored only by reflexively extending skepticism to the sociologist's own explanatory concepts and methods. Sociologists were now not only to see nature as a socio-cultural construct, but also to problematize the individual and collective actors, their interests and power relations, alliances, and so on, which had been so far drawn upon as explanatory variables. Both social and natural worlds were now to be treated as constructs. But of what and by whom, one might ask. So this is talking about, again, the philosophy part of it is weighing up the debates of how do we produce knowledge. And the natural scientific process showed us how we worked it out through experiment, through trial and error on the natural side of it. But even when we get good routines down and we get a good framework for developing what we think is accurate scientific knowledge, that doesn't mean that we have to stop thinking about how that knowledge is produced, right? You have to question, like we talked about in the previous ones, how does our preset biological framework influence the way we perceive things, and our culture might construct things in certain ways. So there's always room for self-reflection. And when the sociologists were criticizing the natural sciences, saying you can't explain something like, you know, suicide only by looking at observable causes. You have to think about the cultures in which they're embedded and the construction. Then that critique also expands in the idea that both the social world and the natural world are actively constructed by us to understand what we're experiencing, and should also be treated as constructs in that way. That self-awareness, that these things are not given, that male supremacy, in terms of, you know, it might be a physiological reality, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a sociological truth. Right? So anyway, there's sorry, I'll find a better section next time with less references to prior concepts that were set up that I haven't had a chance to set up myself. Anyway, so that's your little bit of philosophy for the day, and now we're going to go over to the story. But before we do, before we start talking about dumbass racists, should we do some chat checking? I want to, in the show, begin doing more routine chat check-ins. So I would come on air, greet you guys, give you something to talk about, or I would natter on as I have been now for almost 20 minutes. Well, I guess longer than 20 minutes if you count the fact that I just let the background, like me leaving, you got to see my pajama bottoms in the first part of the show. But I will go ahead and start looking at the chat, since I already interrupt the show twice with my own audio in order to be able to do that. So if you have some questions for me, now the downside of this is when I start reading, you're just going to see the top of my head, so I'll try to lift this up a bit more. But, alright, so I don't see too many people. I mean, hello all 29 of you. Hi guys, hi, it's good to see you. I don't see too much in the way of comments, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to write things in the chat, but I will go with what has already been there, and I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way back. So, TA, I'll just say, T-Arm. Do you know that Medicare is gonna go up against Kraut today, and will you watch it? I have been following the fallout from, well, I was watching the Tonka drama, which was an extension of a prior Kraut, kind of followed on from Kraut drama or that was going on, and then it became the Tonka drama with the fight, and then that's now shifted over to the Ian Miles Chong drama, but Kraut is still in the background because I think Kraut was interacting with both Tonka and Ian Miles Chong as well. It's like distantly related. So I was aware. I was aware that that an invitation had been. Oh yeah, Gary Edwards. I gotta talk about Gary Edwards. I was aware that an agreement had been made that Kraut would appear. I am very skeptical it will actually happen. And that's pretty much because Kraut, in my experience, of course, I'm also a woman, and I think he has a hard time with women who stand up to him. I'm just going to say this: Kraut is still talking to Kevin, even though Kevin publicly humiliated him. Well, Kevin just pointed out that Kraut had humiliated himself. So Kraut can still talk to Kevin after the public faceplant that he did on Kevin's channel. But as soon as he interacts with me, he totally loses his shit. He just cannot be reasonable. He is reduced immediately to personal insults, and he can't think. Like, I get in Twitter interaction with him, and his brain, he just becomes like primal fisty monkey man who wants to punch stuff. And he's crazy. And I don't think he will do well against Medicare, because he is overly emotional. He's not tactical. He is, and also most importantly, he did what he's accused of. He did what he's accused of. Unlike me, when Bering made accusations that I had participated in gathering docs and publishing docs, there's never been any evidence because it didn't happen. Cobalt Cat, even the ED article, the Encyclopedia Germanical article itself, laughs at Bering's idea of a conspiracy, that it had to take, Danny and me working together for them to, put up information that Patrick had published on YouTube. Yeah, so Kraut is completely incapable of, I think, defending himself because he's guilty. He did do all the stuff that he's accused of. I mean, in terms of like going around and collecting the information, he's on a secretly taped call with Sargon where Sargon is telling him to not do it, and then not to put the stuff out or to stop sending him clips of Coach Red Pill on Russia Today. Well, of course, then later Sargon turned around and just published everything on Kiwi Farms on his own channel anyway. So I think it's going to be a meltdown, because Kraut won't be able to lie to Medicare. I think of all the people in that crew, he would be the most like a district attorney, or it would be most like a cross-examination. I think he's got that capacity. I don't agree with what he says, but, you know, if Andy Worski were to do that interview, it would not be the same. Or somebody else, you know, you could kind of, even Coach Red Pill would not be able to break Kraut down, and I think that Medicare will be able to do that, and I don't think Kraut will be able to handle it. So, we'll see. And of course, I dislike Kraut immensely, I think I dislike his tactics immensely, and I think he wastes his time on conspiracies. He sets up little Discord fiefdoms so that he can feel powerful, and he's roped into, I don't know how he's managed this, but he's roped a lot of people and manipulated them into thinking that the way forward to fighting the alt-right is by clearing his name. And anyone who buys into that is being conned. So, my mocha mug, yes. So when I was in Prague, I said I would answer. I will come to your questions in a second. But when I was at Prague, and I was only there for a couple days, and it was mostly in meetings, they gave us a pocket guide to the city, and it sat on my kitchen table now. And when I walk past it, occasionally I'll see the pocket guide to Prague, and I'll just like look longingly. I need to go back. But so that was a really long answer to the Kraut question. Let me find out. Oh, weird. Where I'd left off. Cory Booker 2020. My thoughts on Cory Booker 2020 is a lot like my thoughts on Kristen Gillibrand and Elizabeth Warren and anyone who else is not Kamala Harris, which is I support Cory for the Senate, and I support Elizabeth in the Senate, or, you know, for or in the Senate. Same with Kristen Gillibrand, but I support Kamala for her role in the Senate and as a presidential candidate. I'm not particularly interested in getting in a lot of fights with Booker fans or with Warren fans or with anyone else. And I think I'm already getting brigaded a little bit by Bernie bros, but I don't want to get into that. But no, I'm not interested in tearing down other Democratic nominees in order to advance my nominee. I support Kamala because of the stances she takes today, so don't waste your time sending me clips of videos that she's, you know, like from 4 years ago. Tell me what her position is today. We all know Barack Obama started not supporting marriage equality. He evolved to it, right? So you don't have to have, you know, the candidate you're supporting, if you expect your candidate to have never said anything, especially if they've been in office for like decades, and they were reflecting the popular will at the time, or the public mood at the time, I'm not going to go back and like judge them for being a representative of that issue at that time. I want to know where they are today. And if they have shitty takes today, then I'll deal with where they are today. But like, don't come at me with stuff from Kamala for 5 years ago. Like, tell me where she is today, and then we can talk. So I am not about tearing down our other Democratic nominees. I mean, there's so many too. I mean, there's the Castro guy, but there's 2 Castro guys, and I feel bad, but I kind of I don't. He's not my candidate, so I don't really pay attention. And I don't think House candidates are that impressive. I'm not impressive. House candidates have a much harder time. You've just never had somebody that I can recall from the presidency who came straight out of the House of Representatives. It's usually governors or Senate. So that's some random geek, hello. Do you think 2019 will be the end of Sargon as a thing? I think he's peaked in terms of his influence. He's already a shadow of his Gamersgate self. He's not got the political relevance. And I know people are going to point to his channel and go, oh, look at, he's going to get like 1 million subs. But it's not subs that is important. It's your watch time. So don't, I think it's a better metric. Go to Social Blade and look at the average number of views on a month. And are they going up? Are they staying steady? Or are they going down? That's where it's views that count, not subs. If you've got, you know, 1 million subs, but you get 1/10 of them to actually watch your content, then you might as well have that 10th as your sub base, because the rest is just BS. But no, I mean, Carl makes this is his job, so he will continually find ways to try to be relevant. I don't know that he'll be successful. The question has to be related to the topic or about anything. Bully Hunter, I don't know that fragment. I missed that. Sorry. Yeah, sorry guys. I'm looking at the exciting top of my head bit. Maybe there's a way I can set this up in the break where I can like put it in a way where it looks like I'm looking at the camera. Question: isn't there more important things to spend time and energy on other than internet drama? Well, there might be, but you know what gets clicks and views? I can do a great video on rape culture, and then I can do a 5-minute video on Carl, and the Carl video will get 10 times the number of views than the rape culture one. So you're talking about valuing the worth of the content to its larger society versus what YouTube audience rewards you for. Kraut versus Medicare just sounds like shit versus shit. Yeah, I think that would be the case. Like I said, there's a lot of just sitting back and watching the with popcorn and watching, you know, the people you don't like beat up on each other. And that's highly amusing. What did I say on Twitter? It was like, you know, when your enemies are busy destroying each other, get a good seat and bring popcorn. Tell Kev to give a buzz if he wants to chat. Let's see. I'm looking for more stuff. People replying to each other. What do I think about non-white in the alt-right? I think people who are not white and are espousing a white supremacy are doing it for they're doing it to belong to a group that will never accept them but finds them useful. I could go on, but what is it with billionaires and running for president? Yeah, can I just say F. Howard Schultz? That guy's awful, and as long as we're here, I still see the Gary Edwards thing I want to talk about. But as long as that point comes up, do look at, I know Steve Kornacki had a video that he put up about if there's enough independent voters, and there seems to be this huge, we're really worried that if Howard Schultz runs, he's going to take votes away from the Democrats. When you look at his policy, why? Like, the more the guy talks, he's sexist, he's willing to use racist, you know, insults against people that he's running, potentially running against. He is interested in preserving tax benefits for the wealthy, and he opposes widespread health care for people. So clearly he would take votes away from Donald Trump, because what Democratic, you know, sort of supporting voter, the one thing that the House Dems won on was healthcare, was protecting healthcare. So, and we're moving increasingly, I think, as a country toward a more national healthcare system because it's just cost effective. It is. You know, you can't have a bunch of private companies and the pharmaceuticals and everyone taking their little bit of out of the pocket. You know, $1 goes toward for someone's health care, and the insurance monies take it, and the drug companies take it, and the hospital administrators take it, and the doctor's, you know, 6-figure salary takes it, and what are you left with at the end of it? And so yeah, I think Howard Schultz would be more like a Ross Perot. He would take more votes from the center right and the right than he would from the left. That doesn't mean I want him to run. Definitely not. But because I mean, he could run or not, but I will criticize the hell out of that guy and call him a rhino, because he is. He's a well, not rhino Republican in name only. He's more like a fake. He's like he's like a Republican trying to pass himself off as an independent. Sorry, let me just go back and see if I get a few more questions. So tagging me helps. Sargon is going to stagnate similar to The Amazing Atheist, says T-Arm. I think you're right. There's going to be a hardcore fan base for that. If you look at the YouTube demographics, most of my audience is men, which I find, like, not even just like 56% or 60%, like 80%. 75 to 80% of my audience is men, and they're between, like, they're over somewhere in like the 20s to the 40s in their demos. At least that's what they've reported on their accounts. And that you're just going to get men having a natural advantage in YouTube. Kevin will always have more subs than me, maybe because he doesn't moderate, and so he gets more hate followers. But it's just easier for men to get ahead because men will watch other men more than they'll watch women. Kristi, do you think Trump will get pardoned before he ends up in jail? Andrew Torres predicted that on opening arguments the other day. I think there's a very good possibility. I think that I could see a scenario like that playing out where, you know, Trump would find, well, it is not impossible and it's not implausible. One, because we've already seen it happen with the Ford-Nixon thing, right? So we know that people were very mad at the time, and Ford felt like we needed to close this chapter to heal the whole Watergate scandal thing. The problem is that how would it happen if, you know, Trump loses in the next election and he realizes maybe that he is up for a lot of prosecutions, which he will be. He'll be up for a lot of prosecutions by the time he loses in 2020. It might make more sense for him to resign the presidency and give it to Mike Pence while in the lame duck session in order to obtain a pardon. That's really the only scenario I could see that. I don't know I didn't listen to the opening arguments podcast. I don't know what scenario Andrew Torres has described, but that is one. Like, if you were to ask me, how could Trump get himself pardoned? He can't pardon himself. That would not be a secure way to do it because it won't stand up in court. However, if he resigns the presidency and Mike Pence takes it, and Mike Pence has made the agreement to pardon Trump and all of his family members, and then he's going to be out of office in January, there would be literally nothing we could do. So that could happen. Now, I'm making that up on the fly, so you have to also give me a little bit of thinking on my feet credit if there's any holes in my reasoning. Do I think that Tonka and Ian are legitimately going to end up in jail as a result of the drama? God, you guys really, like, stop talking about all the Tonka stuff. All right, I'll say this one other thing, and then I'll also mention the Gary Edwards stuff. Ian, possibly. Ian Milestrong, for those of you who don't follow it, has, from Malaysia, really decided not only, he is not only accused, Ian Milestrong is not only accused of doing at least, well, 3 things. Trying to get Andy Worski's channel banned by putting on porn images in order to violate the rules and get Andy's channel taken down. 2, DDoSing Andy Worski's channel. And 3, what was the other thing? Dang it. Oh, yeah. Calling in a police report. This is like, how could I forget the most criminal thing he did? Calling in a police report. Well, criminal. This is yet to be determined. After denying doing those 3 things, Ian reversed himself and admitted to 2 of them. He said, oh yeah, actually I did do the thumbnails. Oh yeah, and I actually did call the police, but I didn't do the DDoSing. You know, sorry, at this point you've already given at least 2 stories, so no credibility left. I don't know how the police in Malaysia handle things. I don't know that even there would be charges that could be filed in Malaysia against what he did. Andy would need to get an attorney who's familiar with Malaysian law and look for, maybe there's some sort of, I would be pretty, sorry, I'm just going to be super, super biased here, and say, I don't know that Malaysia is on the forefront of monitoring and regulating online harassment and abuse. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is, but, you know, the laws are pretty sparse in places like where people have the first world problems to deal with, to sort of like enact laws against this. So I don't know the state of Malaysian laws, but it seems to me that that there is some looking at a pattern of harassment and maybe stalking or something else. But I don't know what's going to be. You know, I don't think that DDoSing or changing the thumbnails. You could say changing the thumbnails was had porn on it, and that kind of porn is illegal in Malaysia. But again, you'd need to know how the law specifically states the crime. So if it says, you know, like publishing images, then you'd have to have screenshots and you'd have to be able to set it. And would the police even, you know, proceed with that kind of investigation? I don't know. Do I think beards will ever become less fashionable? Well, they were for a very long time. It was the hipsters. I mean, for me, I really think hipsters brought beards back. And, you know, beards also made you had the 5 o'clock shadow. Was that in the 90s? Where, like, the Miami Vice, when Don Johnson was just not shave and have a shitty 5 o'clock shadow on his face all day. I think that was a moment in time. But what I do like about the modern hipster movement is that they're not just bringing back sort of like Ted Cruz crappy deer hunting beards. You guys know what I mean by that? in the Midwest of, and maybe other places too, the Rocky Mountains or wherever, when you get autumn deer hunting or other hunting in the woods kind of seasons and permits becoming available, men in my family and lots of places, lots of men I know, grow out their beards because they're going to be out in the cold hunting, and it helps keep their face warm. But then they shave it off, for Christmas or by Christmas time. Whereas the hipster beards, they're like growing out proper Civil War, fuzzy, fluffy things that you can shape and you actually have to maintain, and cool. Like, it's a throwback for me. I actually find it, well, I like the 1920s too. I like kind of retro things. And so, for guys to be wearing like big bushy beards, I feel like I'm walking through a Civil War, period or something a little bit when I see guys who have that. So people hate Howard Schultz in Seattle. Yeah, go Seattle. Kristi, what if anything do you think about Andrew Yang? I don't know who Andrew Yang is, so I have no opinion on the subject. The left won't vote for Schultz. Agreed. Harris is the centrist of the establishment. I'm sure that's what the Bernie people are going to start saying. She's your new Hillary Clinton. I know. You guys find her really threatening. After being on the kill stream, what do I think about Ralph and Co? Oh, can we just skip that? Yeah, I think I did the whole that. I'm not going to dominate the whole show talking about those guys. So I don't think a Democrat would ever pardon Trump? No. No. A Democrat will never pardon Trump. It would be political suicide. It would be party suicide. It would just not be on. The only way he's going to get a pardon I see is if he gets it from Mike Pence. But no Democrat could live down pardoning a man who conspired with Russians to undermine the outcome of our election. No. Just no. Alright, I see my name one more time. How are you feeling today? Do I have the mental capacity this morning for challenging questions? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if I do. Alright, so end of reading the chat. That was 20 minutes of reading the chat, you guys. I haven't even got to the racist blackface dude who needs to resign, and I haven't even got yet to the exciting bit with Gary Edwards that I've been threatening to tell you about. Alright, let me find the Gary Edwards thing, because it's on my Twitter feed and it's pretty easy. Alright, so my history with Gary Edwards is when I started off on this channel, I was doing like some feminist takes and some other takes on the Bible, because there's a lot of really good feminist critique that has still yet to be made. I just don't have time for it. I started to do some feminist critique of the Bible as my channel focus, but I didn't keep up with it. Well then, it wasn't known how lefty I was at that point or anything, how progressive or whatever you want to call me. I guess some people don't think I'm that far to the left, relatively. But he made a nice video and got me some bumps. And then I think the next time we talked was when he was trying to but he was trying to discredit intersectionality as a concept. And I was bringing in my understanding as a qualitative mixed methods practitioner. I am trained in both quants and qual, their ontology and their epistemologies, their methodologies and their methods, how to analyze the data and the limitations, of generalizing within a margin of error or looking at a case study and not trying to put too much theoretical weight, not theoretical, but like empirical weight on explaining other things outside of your case study. And what I was trying to explain to Gary, and then sadly it was when Google had really shitty, it was an awful audio, and he just let it go instead of having me F5, because this is when Hangouts were just starting out, and now I would have known to drop out and come back in, but then I didn't. And I was explaining to Gary that intersectionality as a concept is already represented in the quantitative. It has been for a very long time. It's called an interaction effect. And an interaction effect looks at, let's say you've got your ethnicity and your sex. Let's say man, woman is the category, because a lot of times you don't have third options in social science surveys. Non-binary people are missed out by the categories offered to survey respondents. But if you have one effect for being, let's say, a man, and another effect for being part of an ethnic group, whatever it is, white, black, Hispanic, Pakistani, Indian, whatever, that part of why we do regression is so we can isolate individual factors and estimate what specific impact they have on our outcome variable, the thing we're trying to predict. But we also know that if you isolate, let's say, ethnicity and you isolate gender, that maybe you're missing something. Maybe there's an effect that you're skipping over, which is the effect of being both, let's say, a man and of Indian background in the British context. And that there's something unique about those two things together that we can't capture just by measuring one and the other. So what we do is we often multiply the two independent variables to create a separate variable that's the effect of being those two things at the same time. And that's intersectionality. And I was trying to explain that to Gary, but the sound was terrible. And it didn't go along with his ideology. So I don't think he was too interested in my empirical justifications for it. But, and then we just started falling out because I came out as a lefty, and the more I listened to Gary, the more I realized, you know, he hasn't mentioned anything he's published. He's not put up any of his own work that has gone through peer review that I've ever seen to demonstrate that he holds himself to the rigors of peer review, and that he makes he makes original contributions to his field that are, you know, recognized as being such, as being contributions to the field. And then I just started taking him less seriously because he wanted to hide criticizing or critique or evaluation of his things outside of the little YouTube bubble he was in. And that just seemed intellectually dishonest to me. So eventually we kind of parted ways. You know, it's not like we were hanging out or anything, but I just don't have any respect for him as an academic. I mean, he's got opinions. He's basically like, he's a better educated, I'm not saying he's like Sargon. He's clearly well read, but he also has a real high opinion of himself that he doesn't deserve based on what he's put out there as proof that his peers take him seriously. And he also uses, I made a video, Gary Edwards uses weasel words all the time, and he uses weasel words to avoid making specific arguments, demonstrating specific points from real people in reality. You know, he uses weasel words to be able to generalize about what other people say or do or think. And that's intellectually dishonest. So, Kristiosity, lovely Kristiosity, who, by the way, I'm going to be on with later on tonight. Actually, while we're speaking, I probably shouldn't change the time on this. There is a video scheduled on this channel for 6 o'clock tonight. That's a lie. Culture Club is not at 6 o'clock tonight. My time is going to be at 9 o'clock. But at the time I set it up Friday, I couldn't remember what time we were meeting. I was like, I'll just put it in for 6, and then I'll fix it later. And I did put it in for 6, but once I found out the real time, I still hadn't fixed it later. So sorry, everyone. Okay, let's look at dumbass Gary Edwards. Actually, I'll do me big. Do this one instead. No, that's me small. That's the one I want. Yay! Okay. So, there's one, I'm just going to fix this a little bit and then we can, there we go. Boom! Look at me. There's the camera. Look at me go. Right. So, Kristiosity, who I will be with on air later on tonight, tagged me into this, said, Kristi, I think you'd enjoy this. And I did. Oh, it was tasty. It was like malt chocolate, thick malt, concrete shake, malted chocolate, delicious. And so there's a little bit of drama here. Apparently I missed, and Kristiosity tagged me into it. This is from a guy named Aaron Hanian, and he's been having some beef. Apparently Gary Edwards tried to take shots at him and do the kind of same crap that he's done with me, but this guy isn't having it, and he's not only not having it, he wrote an article about it. I'm sorry guys, I didn't realize we were going to do all this drama, fluffy kind of stuff. We will get to some more serious politics, but let's, I guess, in the first hour, get this out of the way. Alright, let's see what Aaron has to say is, as promised, my response to the guy who made a YouTube video about my recent WAPO Washington Post article, not tagging him because he's already made clear he won't engage with me. I encourage you to read this. And there's a little picture here from it, but we'll see it. And let's look at what this guy has to say. Yes, I can continue as Kristi. No, I don't. No, I don't want to sign in. Why do they always? Yes, I agree to your stupid terms. I think it's a good thing that we have the GDPR, the General Regulations on Data Protection. That's not my area of specialty in data protection, but or dealing with data. But it does make for a pretty annoying internet experience. Right, so the title is How to Not Argue Like a Postmodernist. I won't read the whole thing, but well, let's skip down. Okay, we'll just start and see how far we get. Students frequently ask me for advice about writing for the public. I offer practical tips about framing and voice and pace of argument, then conclude with a recommendation that's both obvious and difficult to follow. Once you do publish, don't respond to people whose responses aren't worth your time. But how do you know who's worth responding to and who's not? The single most reliable way of identifying someone who's not worthy of your time is that their opening move is a petty insult. This is also my rule for engaging with people, like when Sargoons, or whatever else comes into my mentions and try to engage with me. And if their opening salvo has some sort of insult, why? Thank you for saving me more time in my life to realize you're not worth my time. So at least these people who do this, who don't actually pretend to be civil, but then just turn on you like 20 tweets in, or 5 tweets in, at least they're honest about the fact that they're not worth your time. So it's in that way more efficient. And then he's got Gary's stupid. He's got Gary's petty little tweet. Oh, look at me in my YouTube safe space. I can say all these edgy things, but I won't put my own peer-reviewed work up for anyone to look at. No. Aaron Arhanian should be ashamed of himself for penning this tripe. It is as poorly versed in the virtues of naturalized empirical epistemology as one would expect from a woke assistant English professor. And their next move, I wrote this, nothing to be proud of, mate. And the one after that, I might have responded to this woke anti-science rubbish. And then he's got and then one more, assistant English professor. This is to say, Gary Edwards is not someone worth responding to. Yes, he's not. And there's a whole post now by a guy who had written an article in WAPO, now on Medium, explaining why Gary Edwards is not worth your freaking time. Right, so then he says to say why he's going to be responding, because he's got this YouTube video. And this is great. Mainly because, why is he responding? Gary's YouTube video, a response to my recent Washington Post article on the pitfalls of scientism, is, from start to finish, laden with instructive examples of logical fallacies and postmodernist interpretive moves, which is to say, it's instructive as negative example, something I'm writing up here because I intend to use it for my first-year writing courses when I teach argumentation. So now Gary Edwards is going to be known to entire cohorts of students. Where does this guy teach? He's an assistant professor, which, by the way, assistant professor is not like an assistant secretary. It's more like a deputy secretary in terms of like deputy secretary of state. An assistant professor is like a couple steps below full professor. It's not a diminutive title. Colby College. There you go. English professor at Colby College. So Colby College, from now on, for years and years on end, and other people, if he gives out the lecture notes, will be learning about how to not make an argument for Gary Edwards. I just find that so funny. All right. In what follows, I'll demonstrate how Gary's argument succumbs to 3 critical weaknesses that render it, charitably, a load of bullshit. In the Frankfurtian sense, empty words uttered by someone unconcerned with the truth or falsity of what he says. This is my experience with Gary too. These weaknesses are 1. Reliance on the ad hom fallacy, or attacking the motives or characteristics of one's opponents, i.e. me, instead of that person's arguments itself. What have we been talking about with like Carl and this EBS guy? Ethan Shiver, whatever his name is. This is what they do, right? They use ad hominems, they use straw man, and they basically demonize you. So anyway, Continuing on. 2. Reliance on the straw man fallacy, or trying to refute an argument that one's opponent, i.e., me, didn't make. 3. Reliance on postmodernist interpretation, specifically suspicious reading, or the hermeneutical of suspicion, an interpretive strategy that approaches a text with suspicion as if the text doesn't really mean what it says, or as if it's hiding nefarious ideological content that, like a detective, the suspicious reader must sleuth out and expose. As Frederick Jameson wrote, if everything were transparent, then no ideology would be possible, and no domination either. Right. So then he goes through and does point by point. Well, I'll sort of wrap it up from here. But point by point, he just destroys him. Destroys him. And you should really read it. It is a masterclass in breaking down a bullshit artist. So, a little bit for you guys on that. Go ahead and check that out. Again, it's on medium.com, and it's how not to argue like a postmodernist. So that was very, very, very entertaining to me. I was just like, yeah, please do go on. Tell me more. Oh, what a wonderful example that is. Isn't that interesting? Why would he write that? Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. My internal clock is telling me we've been going for about an hour. Yep, 3 minutes after. All right. So guys, wow, I've got to nothing that I actually thought we were going to do today. That's fine. That's fine. I've been able to sit here and natter for an hour, and that's great because it means that I haven't had to struggle for content. But at the hour mark, you know, we normally do a break. This time I'm actually going to put on the right music. So you can get my opening music, which you didn't get before. You just got me disappearing, going into another room, getting my stuff ready, and coming back. So let's see, it was 3 minutes after the hour. Let's give 5 minutes, do a 5-minute break if you guys want to get some fresh air, rush your coffee, go out for a smoke break, whatever. Check your Twitter feed, and we'll come back. I will have fresh coffee, and then in the second hour, we will start off. I'll try to set up my tablet in such a way. I mean, I did pay for the decks, so I should be able to set it up in such a way that I can integrate it into my setup here. But we'll do a few more questions from the chat. I want to talk a little bit of politics. I do want to cover the blackface issue, and there's some other things that I wanted to talk about, but we'll see how that goes. So now that we're officially at 4 minutes after the hour, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. I will see you guys here, the idea of 9 minutes after. So talk to you guys really soon. Bye. Thank you! Thank you. Sorry, I really need a post-it note. That's what I need. Thank you. Send it some random geek, by the way. Because I go and I do other things and I come back and I just start talking and I forget. But I should put up a post-it note permanently that I can put up on air, like microphone on, microphone off. Or here, I should put it on my microphone. So anyway, thank you guys for reminding me. I mute myself so you don't have to listen to the coffee sound as I make my coffee in the background. The grinder is very loud and all of that. But anyway, thank you for letting me know. So what I was babbling about silently was that I had managed time to go and sort out my coffee. I had to make more water, so it took longer. But what I hadn't was from setting up my thing that shows me your comments. So I went ahead and tried to set that up. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a couple more questions from the chat because I'm pretty sure that's what I said I would do when I came back. And then we'll look a little bit at my take on, I mean, it's not that important, but my take on the blackface issue, and we'll probably get close to the end of the show then. Alright, someone saying big beards make me think of Greek philosophers rather than Civil War generals. Yeah, I can see that. Although, you know, trying to think, you know, in the Roman style, there were sort of periods where beards were fashionable and not, and trying to remember, I guess there's, we don't know what Socrates looked like, but people tend to put him with a beard. So, alright, I'm scrolling back to the comments. I found the one, alright, where Democrats going to pardon him, so I got that far back. Giving police false info on Andy. Well, in terms of there being guns in the house, so this is from Armageddon. There were guns in the house. They belonged to Andy's roommate, from my understanding, and then they were owned legally. And that Ian reported he thought there were drugs there and there weren't. But considering that, from what I heard, Andy Worski's roommate is a cop, it'd be really stupid to keep drugs on the premises. But anyway. The one downside of using this tablet in this format is if you knock it in any way, the connection becomes even slightly not perfect. It will turn itself off and then you have to open it again, which is highly annoying. So now I have to scroll back. Yeah, big beards and philosophy. Looking for anything else. Is there such a thing as government? Is there anything as a government of national unity in the U.S. like the Brits have? You grant we are at war with Russia and you welcome such a government. We don't have a thing of government of national unity in the U.S. However, until Trump, there was a norm in politics. There was a. So this is why. How am I muted? Thank you guys. I don't know where that happened. Thank you for messaging me. How did that... Did I ever unmute? I thought I was unmuted. So, I actually thought I unmuted myself, guys. And then I went back in my feed. I'm really sorry if I unmuted I actually thought I unmuted myself a long time ago. So, God. OBS sucks. You know, and here's the thing. I could take down the video and cut out the silence, but then that ruins the live chat. It just eliminates the live chat, which sucks. So really sorry, you guys, for the sound problem, and also thank you to some random geek for that. I will put in the timestamps when I'm completely silenced. This is so embarrassing. But you know, the other thing too is that I don't want to be stuck in Hangouts. So thank you for bearing with me. So just in the chat, oh, I did, but I muted myself again. Okay, yeah, what I will do then maybe is I will move the OBS interface to a place where I can't accidentally click it. See, every day's a school day. Every day you learn a little bit more. So now I'm going to get a post-it note, and I'm going to have turn mic on, and I'll put it on here when I muted myself. And I also need to know to move my OBS studio interface to a place where I can't be accidentally muted myself. All right. Okay, so it looks like 13 minutes ago I was muted for only about 14 minutes. Russia rigged the stream. You guys are hilarious. All right. So let me see. I don't know what I was talking about when I was muted. So I'm just gonna, I'll try to go. Okay, I had gotten to the part where Kristi was a communist. Did you guys hear me mention that? And I also talked about the new Twitter layout. Basically, all you missed if you didn't hear that was that I preferred that they swapped the left and the right where they put things. Like, it was really not that exciting. Nothing to do is best day. I agree. Can I just say there, who was that? Jim1223. I had a Saturday where I could sleep as late as I wanted. I ended up waking up at 7:30 in the morning anyway. That was weird. But I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to be anywhere at a certain time. I didn't get out of my pajamas yesterday. I made minimal efforts to prepare food. And it was just so nice to have a day where there were no demands or expectations placed on me. I had nothing to do and all day to do it, and it felt like a vacation. It was lovely. All right. Hi, Knox the Cat. Sorry that you always miss these streams, but really, it's not, you don't have to watch it live. So then I get no sound. Sorry. Should liberals and leftists encourage Howard Schultz to run to the spoiler effect? No. I don't think we should. I mean, Howard, any independent is going to be a monkey's wrench thrown in or a spanner in the works. And I do suspect that it would still be more like a Ross Perot thing. I think that people who like to think of themselves as independents but end up voting Republican would probably be more attracted to him as a candidate. However, I think that as a political scientist, can I just say selfishly, it's easier to make a prediction with 2 candidates than with 3, so it would be easier to follow the election. So I would just encourage Howard Schultz to go away because he's annoying. He's welcome to his opinions, but I don't have to listen to him. That's my opinion. Is it true the most marginalized group in the world are in fact gamers? No. Is Trump loving the blackface already? I'm sure he doesn't have any problems with it. Okay, muted. Lost the sound. Read my lips. No new taxes. Oh wait, no, that was from the last century. Gary Edwards strikes again. You guys are funny. I blame Sargon. All right. Oh, I was talking about Gary Edwards, and we missed all of that. Oh well, I think it wasn't. All right. Okay, we're back on sound. And again, sorry guys. Like I said, learning. Suppose Obama died in 2014. No, I'm not. Sorry, guys. I'm not doing hypotheticals. And Joe Biden was president running in 2016. Do you think he would have won? You know, I don't. Again, that question assumes that Hillary Clinton is the problem, not Russian interference. And I don't think Joe Biden is any farther to the left than Clinton was. So no, I don't think it would have changed much. What did I say about Kristi being a communist? I think it was discussed in the chat that she's not. She's something else. And I don't personally know. I mean, I don't ask her to label herself. So, right. Yeah, okay. We already did the postmodernist thing. That's me catching up with the questions. So I'm trying to get over, I'm a little bit rattled by muting myself again, so I'm sort of hypersensitive now to what my mouse is doing on the other side of the screen, but so what do you got? From Obama to Trump to the New Dems, the pendulum swings to get more and more pronounced. You know, the thing is that the idea that, you know, the population's public sentiment moves. One of my colleagues, John Bartle, well, he's not. He was teaching at Essex, and then I got a PhD. So, and now we chat as colleagues. So, but his research was looking at, in terms of the British popular opinion, going back to when surveys started and getting all the survey data ever and aggregating it up like on the, you know, population level rather than individual level, and just look at aggregate time points from a bunch of different surveys going back to the 1940s and 50s. And what he found is that where public sentiment starts, let's say public sentiment starts a little bit to the right, on average, it's sort of like tilting right, and you put in a more right government. That government runs, you know, in power for a while, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, and then people get fed up of cutbacks in the NHS and right-wing policies, and so they move to the left, and then you see the left take over, and you get governance by a more left-wing party, and as people see maybe more services, but also their taxes get up, they start going over to the right and complaining about spending again. And so you get the ascendancy of a more right government, and basically public opinion is a shifting target. They are responding to and reacting to the policies that are enacted. And there's a cost of rule. The longer you're in power, the more you accrete to yourself blame for things. And it might take 2 or 3, you know, governments, but you eventually will see a shift. And the same thing happened in the United States in that, you know, in the 1970s, the Democratic Party was perceived as being more to the left, and then you had Reagan, and then Clinton came in and had the more centrist, like for instance, they got rid of like opposing the death penalty. I remember that being a big issue in the early 90s. Like that was abandoning opposition to the death penalty was evidence that the Democratic Party was sort of moving to be more of a centrist party. So you had this public relations thing in the 1990s where the Democrats moved to occupy that more centrist space. You saw them, it was, you know, the 90s, you had 80s and 90s, you had the war on drugs, and you had a lot of white Americans who they wanted to compete with the votes for, and so they started taking up a more consistent, like sort of tough on crime stance in response to, in a lot of ways, Republicans demonizing Democratic attempts to rehabilitate people and be nice. And the American populace wanted revenge and blood and no tolerance, especially because in the 1990s, when it was a crack epidemic, it was affecting the African American community. Now when it's the opioid crisis and it's in the white community, now it's all about rehabilitation. So that racism, I'm not excusing it, I'm acknowledging it, but that racism was part of what was being reacted to in terms of the politicians and the positions on crime. So then we had that more centrist thing, then you had a shift over with Bush and the war and all that stuff, and then you had another swing back. And Barack Obama ran as a far more progressive candidate than he governed as a president. And I like to remind some of my more progressive Dems of this, that when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were running in 2008, yeah, 8 and 12, 7 and 8, it was all about, Barack Obama was the Bernie Sanders of the day. He was the progressive one. He was the anti-war candidate. He was the one who was going to shut down Guantanamo Bay. He was the one who was going to get us out of this. He was going to do the blah, 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 right? So they had the primary. Barack Obama won. My preferred candidate lost, and I got in line to support my candidate. I didn't carry on bitching about Barack Obama for 4 years the way Bernie bros do, right? So anyway, got Obama in power, and I lined up behind my president. Like, this is our Democratic president. These are his policies. I'm going to disagree, but I'm going to support him. And all the lefty people who were convincing me that Hillary Clinton was evil on 2 legs and Barack Obama was the second coming, by the time he ran for re-election, had all stabbed him in the back. All hated him. So, you know, I just don't listen to those people anymore. My friends who hold those positions, because, you know, the stuff I heard about Bernie being so much better than Hillary was the exact same thing I heard about Barack Obama. And yet when he got into governing, he ruled like a centrist because presidents are constrained in the ways candidates aren't, and you can never make all of your supporters happy. And so they just abandoned him. They ditched his ass. And I stuck by Barack longer than they did. So, that's, I don't know how I got here, but that's where I'm ending it. Oh, it was about the, all right, so, how can our anarchists radicalize rural Americans? Go listen to them. You know, if you want to radicalize rural Americans, you need to go spend some time on Friday Fish Fry listening to what real people talk about. One person on MSNBC made a really, really, really good point. And I know it's only I don't want to over demand on the Democratic majority in the House now, because they've not even been in power for a month yet. They've not even been sworn in for a month yet. But they didn't get elected on impeaching the president, and they didn't get elected on necessarily voter reform as a national issue. There are certain states where they did probably get some people supporting their party, the Democratic Party, because of its stance against the kind of voter suppression the GOP puts up. But most people, if they voted for the Democrats in 2018, they were voting on health care. And there's not been, because of the whole shutdown and the immigration focus, there hasn't been an opportunity yet. And again, it's only been a month for the Democrats to actually engage in some of these reforms of Obamacare in order to save the program, in order to improve the program, in order to expand the program. But, you know, if you want to get people on your side, then you have to start from where they are. And this is when I get people on Twitter who come up to me and say, oh, you know, what can we do to get more progressive candidates? I'm like, you need to go knock on doors. And you need to not talk. You need to listen. Because if you want to understand, if you want to get people on your side, if you want to convince people, the first thing that you have to do is convince them that you hear what they say. It's not a one-way conversation where you talk and they're just convinced. You have to start from where they are. And I just have the sense that many people on the left who think we should run farther left candidates than we currently do, don't knock on doors. And don't talk to people who are in the rural areas or the suburban areas. Why aren't they voting for those more progressive candidates? Listen, what are their perceptions? And this is it. You know, you can't just put up a far left candidate and go, well, your other choice is a Republican, so just vote for the lefty. That's not going to work, because you're not connecting with people's concerns. What people are concerned about generally is their healthcare, the state of their schools, the state of their roads, whether or not their snow is getting plowed, whether or not their post is getting picked. A lot of people don't have time for big picture questions. So if you want to get them over to your side, you got to start from where they are. All right. Kristi Bruce says, but Obama got blamed for everything after year one and the midterms. Yeah, Trump's the most unpopular president ever. Does that old pendulum module still hold? In terms of left-right, I do think that there is, it's a cause and effect. So the difference between the British government, I should say, and the U.S. government, it's a cleaner measure in the U.K. Why? Because you basically have elected dictatorship for the period of time the government's in, unless it's a coalition government, right? But if Labour wins, Labour makes those policies and they are held accountable to the voters. If the Conservatives have a government and make policies, they are going to be held accountable by the voters. And so you have a clear punish Labour, punish the Tories choice in British elections. Because of the nature of divided government, it's much harder to hold one party accountable unless they control all, well, not all three branches. You shouldn't be able to control the Supreme Court. But in terms of the two houses and the executive branch, it's so often split that it's very difficult to assign clear responsibilities. And of course, the parties always blame each other. So that the pendulum does move, but you're not going to get a massive left-wing swing that would warrant revolution, given the fact that our system is designed to be forced compromise, and it divides up power, and it's meant to sort of compartmentalize that. So I don't see revolution in the future. I don't think Americans generally are culturally predisposed to be open to the idea of revolution. So, I watch old happy hour podcasts, and sometimes when you or Kevin screen share, people can see the Hangout link and join and troll. Yeah, well, we stopped doing that. We figured that out, and we stopped doing that for a couple weeks now. So, but thanks. Yeah, it just took one time of having being brigaded. That I think it only happened twice on 2 shows, and then it was pretty easy to figure out that they were stealing the link from the screen, and Kevin and I both taken actions to prevent that from happening. Tony Blair, left wing. If the conservatives are evil, have faith in their spin doctors because they will get them out of the shit in 5 years flat. Yeah, spin doctors, that's what their job is. And also, I generally find that people on the right campaign more toward emotions, especially fear and a sense of threat. Whereas people on the left were a bit too clever for our own good. We tend to speak, we ask people to be more compassionate than conservatives do, and we speak to them at a higher language because we deal with complex problems, and we know that complex problems require complex solutions. So Donald Trump, in comparison, will demonize brown people and say the solution is a wall. And there's a simplicity in there that requires no other engagement, whereas being a lefty and a progressive requires more work. So, yeah, spin is important in politics. And that's why I pointed out that the Democrats in Congress got elected on healthcare. And yes, we need the investigations into the president and his son and Michael Cohen and everyone else. We need all of those. We need Congress to be doing his job. We need Congress to be subpoenaing his tax records. We need Michael Cohen to testify. We need all those things. But we can't forget why people sent Democrats there. And that was to be a voice for making healthcare easier to access, more affordable, and for there to be, more options. And that's their real job. That's the eye on the prize that they have to really stay focused on. And despite, they have to walk and chew gum at the same time. As a door knocker, you need to find the ones in need and fix their problems. Yeah, I think in terms of, if you go on a door and you do knock and you're out there and you're working on behalf of a candidate, making the connection between their lives and the policy outcomes is something you can do on the doors, but the first thing you have to do is listen and hear what their problems are. Why don't people understand that big picture problems will affect their little picture? Environmental destruction, for example, will make your life worse. Our brains are not, so asks 255. Our brains are not well set up for that. We're biologically disadvantaged when it comes to threat assessments. So this is a really well-known phenomenon. For instance, in crime statistics, people are disproportionately afraid of a crime happening to them than is realistically possible. So people's perception of how much crime is happening in their city or in their neighborhood is mostly, quite often, much, much higher than the actual rates of crime. And that's because when we see a news item about crime, it sticks and we have this sort of distorted perception because we remember, oh my gosh, there was this crime and this crime and this crime and this crime. But in the aggregate, if you look at it, like those 4 crimes were nothing compared to like 3 years ago. But we don't remember that. Right? So when it comes to big picture problems, it's hard for us to really get our heads around all the things that need to happen to fix global warming. If you remember, there's a Doug Stanhope bit where he's talking about green, how abortion is green and sodomy is eco-friendly. Do you remember this? If you've not seen it, you should. It's very good. But in it, he's saying, everyone is asked to do do your little bits for the environment. So, cut up your stop using plastic rings, but cut up your plastic rings before you throw them away so it doesn't end up over a dolphin's mouth or snout. Or turn off your faucet while you're brushing your teeth instead of letting it run to save on water. recycle your plastics, your aluminum cans. We can all do those little things. But in the end, and look, all those little things add up. All those little things add up. But in terms of actually doing something to save the environment, Doug Stanhope's point was, the worst thing you can do for the environment, if you're really into climate change and stopping climate change, stop having kids. Because your kids will produce more carbon than you could on your own in your own lifetime, you know, especially if you have 2 kids now. So his point was that abortion was green and that sodomy was eco-friendly because it stops people from having babies. Now, Doug Stanhope is Doug Stanhope. But in that, it does get to that bigger problem of, okay, so I'm in Europe, I don't have a car, I use public transport, but I still have to fly in business. And I don't have the luxury that my company will always fund me to take the most eco-friendly route to my destination. And also, it might not make a lot of sense. If I have to travel 11 hours by train to get to a conference in order to have zero carbon impact or a lower carbon impact, when the flight would take 4 hours, okay, is it reasonable for me to ask to spend 7 extra hours in travel? You know, and so this is the problem, is that we feel, each of us in terms of our agency is very small. We have very small amounts of agency. But what we do need is we need governments to make bigger policies. The problem with making those bigger policies is that it's not something we can directly control. And you can put a lot of time and effort into it, but you're going up against the oil companies. So, you know, there's just, it's such a big and complicated problem. Your average person is not really plugged in enough or even has the time to learn all of this stuff in order to be well educated and overcome that mental bias toward, you know, perceptions of what threats are. I don't think my brain works like that at all because I worry about climate change, but have to be reminded to lock doors about break-ins. Well, it's more about the cause and effect, like how much agency you have and how much, you know, you can really really do. I think most people don't. I mean, we're all worried about climate change, but individually there's very little we can do. And even if you are maximizing your carbon output, you know, reduction situation, that's going to have a very small effect in terms of the problem overall. I can't read and broadcast and talk and think at the same time. So occasionally my brain, that's the buffering. When I'm like doing that, that's buffer in my head. Question, will the House Dems propose a bill form of Medicare for all, and would Medicare for all pass in the current Congress? I do think that they should they should proceed with some bills. Medicare for all would require a national restructuring of Medicare. Medicare, as it's currently set up, is underfunded. It's going to be running at a maximum of like 90% or 91% of payouts within like the next decade or 20 years. So it will continue to run, like Medicaid, or Medicare, I should say, isn't running into insolvency, but it is currently projected to be unable to pay for the things that people would be eligible under it. And that's why I oppose the sort of Medicare for all hashtag, because if you just open up Medicare for all right now, it's going to blow up the system. You need to reform you need to reform Medicare to be for all. We need a rethinking of how it's funded, and you know, whether or not we should perhaps have income cutoffs. I generally don't like to put what's the word I'm looking for? It's means testing. That's a word that trips off the tongue. I generally oppose the idea of means testing or putting some sort of economic thresholds on social services, on public goods, because I think that's, if you pay into it, you should be able to get things out of it regardless. That's the point of it. Because if you, Howard Schultz, for instance, is on Medicare because he's over 65 and he uses it. That's what I was reported on AM Joy. And if he could have paid a lot more into the system, you know, to get benefits out of it, I think that's a better. So he paid a higher rate, or he paid on more of his income a Medicare contribution than currently exists, and then he is also able to be on Medicare. But I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's not that it's not fair. If people pay into a system that they can never benefit from, they will be resentful. And that's why I think, especially like with Medicare, means testing doesn't make any sense. What I do think, though, is that any caps on, like, above this level of threshold, you don't have to pay into Medicare or Social Security or anything else. Those should all be blown away. I think all of those should be taxed all the way up to every last penny, because you're paying into the contribution. But if you don't, sorry, Medicare for All needs a financial restructuring before we bring people into the program. It needs to be financially sustainable. And that question is about taxes and who pays what and how much and for how long. And so that's, I think the Medicare for All is too easy an answer for such a complicated program that's already struggling, already underfunded. Total extinction of the human species is in terms of total extinction of the human species is the greenest possible thing. You can't argue that's not a potentially true statement. I think we do more harm to the environment than any other species. It's the greenest thing possible, but it's certainly not the one that is the most advancing of human flourishing. Worrying about stuff I can't affect is an issue for you. Yeah, I understand that. There's a lot of things that we feel are out of our control, and we can do little things in our own lives, but having to accept that doing our best and trying our hardest is sometimes the best we can do. And, I was reflecting on the fact that earlier in the week someone was saying, oh, men gave women the right to vote, so y'all should be thankful, and because all these men were standing with women. And I was like, it took 70 years of activism for women to get the right to vote in the United States. So it's not like men just handed us our stuff, But when it comes, when there's a big problem, you can't always fix it in your lifetime. You can't always fix it in the first session, whatever. There were women who were born and campaigned for the vote and died and never saw a woman voting. But their efforts were not wasted. So I think that's the same thing with, it might be in 150 years before we finally get our act together and deal with climate change, but that doesn't mean every step along the way wasn't important. A possible solution to U.S. healthcare, a federally backed competition to the private insurance market as a price setter. Yeah, I definitely think that one of the things that could help the U.S. health insurance market would be a transparent pricing of services. I think a law requiring, just like with the pay gap transparency in the UK, the study found that in the UK, companies that were forced to be transparent about their gender gap in pay differences between their men and women employees, the pay gaps got smaller. And right now, there's a real racket in the U.S. healthcare industry in that bigger insurance companies can negotiate a lower price for services than smaller insurance companies. But the cost of an x-ray is the cost of an x-ray is the cost of an x-ray. There's no difference between having an x-ray done for Humana or whatever else, or Blue Cross Blue Shield, and some other cooperative insurance. So let's open up all the pricing and see all the standardized pricing. I don't want hospitals to lose money. I don't want them to not be able to buy new equipment because they haven't factored in a planned obsolescence and we need to replace this, MRI machine in 10 years because we probably will have moved on greatly in terms of technology. But so we need to have those sensible charges for the long-term preservation. But the way it's currently working is not working. Question, guys. Okay, all right. Oh no, I'm not that far behind. All right. Capitalism overworking the class. Yeah, I mean, in the United States especially, it's ridiculous. In terms of overworking the working class, a colleague of mine had their second child, and a New Year's baby, very sweet. They had their first son in the United States, and the second child they've had now while being in Germany. So they've experienced parental leave under both systems. And my colleague was saying, because he had just, he was still off, I think initially fathers get 6 weeks. The fathers get 6 weeks of paid leave to be at home. And then they can take like another 2 months up to the first year. So what will often happen is mom and dad we're assuming here like heterosexual couple, but mom and dad get home from the hospital and both of them are there with the baby for the first 6 weeks. And then usually they have it so because of nursing, breastfeeding, and changing, mom stays at home for the first 8 or 9 months. And then as the child approaches like 1 year, mom will transition back into work and dad will take off a further 2 months and be a primary care provider. That way they get to maximize the benefit in terms of the child care provision, but also taking into account the baby's development and the biological connection between the mother and the breast milk. It's easier to be on site for that. And he said, I saw him, he was running in the office for something, I bumped into him, congratulated him, and my colleague said that having now experienced parental leave in both the United States and Germany, he considers the US system barbaric. That was the word he used. Barbaric. And unfortunately, because people in the States are so isolated from the rest of the world, they don't have a chance to see how other people could live, how other people do live. And the fact that state benefits are these kinds of state benefits don't ruin your economy. If you do them smartly and you distribute the costs, you can actually have workers who are happier and healthier and less stressed. And that is a good thing for employers. So, anyway, how did we get on that? Is it hypocritical to let the thought of American citizens having their rights curtailed bother you more than the thought of people in the developing world? No, I think that human rights are human rights are human rights. I think some places have a better system in place for protecting those rights, and that we need to not backslide, and that we need to do, support people's advancement of human rights in places where the laws aren't like that. Question: Trump dropped about 6 to 7 points over the shutdown. There's no recovery. So far, no recovery. So it's not just the shutdown you're reading. Well, it is and it isn't. So it's not, it is the shutdown, but it's also, I think, the way he approached the shutdown. Trump went on air before the shutdown happened saying he would take credit for it. And that was the soundbite. And that was in the evening news. And that clip got played a lot. So for people who have busy days, who only get news maybe by watching 30 minutes of it on a broadcast station, that clip is pretty definitive. He says he's going to take on the shutdown, so I think that was part of it. The other thing too, I think the Democrats did a good job of trying to be proactive, saying, look, we're happy to fund border security. We just don't think a wall is a good investment when it won't have a benefit. And Trump really couldn't get over that argument as to why. He just kept repeating points. There was also the fact that people in the US were not happy about the shutdown being held or conducted because of a political fight, and they also didn't like to see the impact of it, that Trump was willing to take people. So it's not just about the shutdown. I think it's more about a reflection of frustration with his management style and the way that he says that he's a deal maker but then fails to make good deals. He's damaging his own brand, if you think about the Ann Coulter critique, that he's had 2 years to do this and he couldn't get it done. And so I think part of that, with public opinion, people are going to and fro. And also when the Democrats actually when the Democrats have a candidate, that focuses people's mind. And sometimes that opposition candidate will drive some people back over to Trump. But my reading is that it's not about it's not about the shutdown per se, but that the shutdown is a symptom of his poor management style. I think people are getting fed up of that. Okay, I did that one already. Or did I not? Possible solution: U.S. healthcare is a federally backed competition to the private insurance market that does not have the option to refuse service and to act on a price set. Yeah, I'm reading this really quick and I don't know if I know all those terms, but that I would like to see something closer to Germany than the UK. And I'm on record on this, that in Germany they have that sort of public and private mix. And the reason why I think it works optimally in health insurance is if you make the health delivery part of it the public service, so that it's open and accessible for everyone. And then you use things that actually work about capitalism in terms of efficiency and trying to cut off unnecessary costs on the insurance paperwork side of things. in the insurance companies and the administration, the calculation of risk, and doing all of those things, and giving them a small profit, like a capped profit. Wasn't that the case in the US? There was like a 10% profit cap, and then they had to redistribute things, right? So I don't begrudge people making money enough to live on and have wages and to build your company up going forward, but it's not a good model for healthcare delivery. It is a good model for optimizing something like bureaucratic paperwork interactions and administrative stuff and legal compliance. So that's why I think it works well. I have not done the blackface guy yet, so actually let's go over there. I don't know if he was a progressive. Someone was asking in the chat if he was a progressive. I think he's been around. He voted for Reagan back in the 80s, I've been told. So he is probably more like, you know, a fence sitter. And if you're gonna ask, you know, like who was it? Who was which bad Charlie Kirk, perhaps, on Twitter? They all have such bad takes. It's kind of hard to tell some of these white guys apart sometimes. That's racist. They're all, you know, sort of like brown-haired white guys who like to shout a lot. I don't think it was Ben Shapiro, and I don't think it was Paul Joseph Watson, although obviously he has an accent, so he's slightly more distinguishable. But, yeah, this effing guy. What can you say other than that? Look, he should have come out about this before. His entire way of dealing with it has been a complete media disaster. He said it was him. Now he's saying it wasn't him. And he also said he didn't know which person he was in the photo. Okay. When we have these talks, this reminds me a lot of the Al Franken problem. And let me give you my take as a assessor of political realities. On the one hand, you have the individual. Right? You have Al Franken letting his hand slide down too far and women feeling uncomfortable, him doing the picture. And you've got this guy who he's not got a bad track record. It's not like he's a terrible person. But he has this dark thing from his past, dark secret from his past that's come up. And he's not, you know, when you run for office, especially when you're running for something like a statewide office like this, you do opposition research on yourself and his oppo, because you want to know what your enemies or your opponents, sometimes they're your enemies, but your political opponents on the ballot anyway, will say about you in order to discredit you, because you want to ideally identify any of those potential problems and own them first and own them on your terms. If you've messed up, it's far better for you to control the narrative over your apology and everything else than to let it come out and then have to react to it. Now, Northam received a significant amount of support from the African American community, and when this happened, it quite rightly it showed a completely different side of this candidate, and one that he was not open and honest about, and one that he has basically tried to figure out a tactic. Instead of owning it, how can he own it and still keep his office? So on the individual level, there is a self-preservation instinct. I get that. Al Franken did not want to leave the U.S. Senate. Northam has not even been governor for like a month, right? He just got elected, and he doesn't want to give up his power. I get that. I get why it's rational to want to find a way to stay in your political position. However, these guys, Al Franken was also a representative of the Democratic Party. Northam is a representative of the Democratic Party. Therefore, their decision to stay in power is not just up to them. That is why you see people coming out and putting pressure on Northam to resign, why there was a lot of pressure on Franken to resign. Because it's not just about them and what's right or wrong. It's also about perception, and perception is reality. And if it means for the greater good, the party's credibility, if it's better for the party to disassociate from you and boot you out in order to win elections, the party is not going to sacrifice itself for you, man. The Democratic Party is not going to get behind Northam as if, you know, like he needs to be defended. If it makes sense, you know, if what's been done is beyond the pale, you have to, you know, you just need to take one for the team. And it sucks for Franken. And Northam, I'm sure he's regretting signing off on that yearbook photo. But he did. And these are the political realities. This is also the logic I apply to the Women's March. I think Linda Sarsour at this point has become a distraction. And so I think, and also, another reason is it's been 3 years since the first Women's March. When are we going to see a change in leadership? I mean, the women who started it were not elected. It was a white woman in Hawaii, I think she lived, and she had the idea, and then there was like some problems because she was using terms that was actually from an African-American Women's March, and she was in DC, so some professional organizers came in, became the face of the Women's March, but they're not democratically elected. I don't owe anything to Linda Sarsour. I'm happy that she put stuff together. I'm grateful she's part of a team that's put on marches every single year to energize, show the energy of the base and connect women and men across the country who care about these issues, care about a multitude of issues. But if she's becoming a distraction from that march, then she needs to go. Like, because it's not, the march is bigger than her. Like, the goals are bigger than her. And the Democratic Party, if Northam is a problem because he messed up, he needs to go. There's no reason to defend racism. Just not. Like, why would you? So, yeah, this guy, he's gonna go. He doesn't know. I don't know if he realizes yet. Sometimes it takes a little longer for the political realities to hit, but if Virginia is a huge state for the presidential election, and every single candidate that's running so far, even thinking about it that I've seen, has called on him to resign. That means he's going to carry no weight. In Virginia, he's basically giving away the power of Virginia when it comes to the presidential elections, because no one will want to be seen with him. So his die is cast. He doesn't know it yet, but he's done. And he's going to resign. Like, I would be shocked if he didn't. For the greater good, right? And also, he just messed up, so he needs to own that. Like, it sucks, but that's how politics goes. And the guy who's going to come in after him, I didn't realize I already knew the lieutenant governor, and I was already impressed with him once. Oh, I got the mouse on the wrong... am I still, yeah, I still have sound. I'm trying to find the name of his lieutenant governor. That's what they call them. This guy looks cool. Although I can't remember his name. And he, like I said, he came to my attention first when, yes, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. This guy is impressive. I didn't realize I was already impressed with him. When I had shared on Twitter somebody who had sat out. This pisses me off. All right, Virginia, I don't know why this stuff happens. I absolutely don't. But on the weekend before Martin Luther King Day, I have to sit out Lee. Martin Luther King Day, the weekend before, they have a ceremony honoring Robert E. Lee. All right, okay, no, he hasn't resigned yet. I was just checking to see if he'd resigned. Here we go. I had retweeted this, and I was infuriated that we have tributes to this fucking traitor in the 21st century. What the hell is going on, Virginia? What is up, white supremacists, the South? You guys need to, like, move beyond the Civil War. That was the 1800s. We're now in the 21st century. Y'all need to realize that you should be spitting on the traitors of the past, not honoring them. So, yeah, again, this is like the white supremacy attempt. This just shows how blatant white supremacists are. They set up this official tribute to Robert E. Lee on the weekend before the Martin Luther King holiday. I think we need a second Civil War, just to tear down all the Confederate monuments, Confederate monuments, and have some teach-ins about what the South really stood for and what the South really did, because this is ridiculous. But this guy, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, only the second African-American elected to statewide office in Virginia, briefly bowed out of his duties in the state Senate on Friday in protest of a tribute to Confederate General Robert E. Lee. Traitor, rebel scum Lee. Fairfax, who normally presides over Richmond's upper chamber, stepped off of the dais and let a Republican wield the gavel while Senator Richard Stewart, racist supporter, racist promoter, marked Lee's 112th birthday with praise for a great Virginian traitor and a great American traitor who actually should be shown an effigy on like the scaffold like Nathan Hale. Why you honor rebels, why you honor traitors to the Constitution, it makes my stomach turn. It makes my stomach turn. And and because it was all in defense of slavery. This is what is at the core of it. It wasn't honor. It wasn't about preserving tradition or a way of life. It was about exploiting human beings and stealing people's lives. It's disgusting. So anyway, he says, I believe there are certain people in history we should honor. I think that, who is talking here? Ah, right, okay, this is Fairfax talking. Quote, I believe that there are certain people in history we should honor that way in the Senate, and I don't believe he is one of them, referring to Lee. Fairfax, a descendant of slaves, said in an interview afterwards, these kinds of ceremonies are just about white men making themselves feel better. And white women. I don't want to like excuse, there's a ton of racist white women out there who are standing right by their man. Stand by your man with your racist traditions and preserving it and somehow whitewashing history to say that you didn't have a bunch of disgusting slave owners as your grandpappy, which is what you had. And if they weren't owning the slaves, they were defending the white people who wanted to enslave the black people. Also disgusting enablers. Anyway, he sat out. And this was the first time I heard of him, and I was so impressed that when I realized that he was the person who sat out the Robert E. Lee ceremony, I was like, all right, yep, like let's get that Northam out. This guy, he's good to go. Also, given the fact that Northam was either, well, he can't decide if he was in the blackface or in the Ku Klux Klan or whether or not he was even in that picture. It's a racism issue. Having him replaced by a man who's already, one, it's not just that he's a person of color. He's a person of color who's already proven that he will not, he will stand on his principles, and he will not back down in the face of, public pressure to smile while a freaking racist, disgusting leader, traitor who led the traitors is honored. Crazy. Yeah, so that's a thing that happened, and I'm still going, yay, I haven't turned off my own mic, and I was also feeling like it was about an hour, and it's 3 minutes after 2, now it's 4 minutes after 2, told you that internal clock goes well. Right, so I'm gonna look a few more, you can still, yeah, thank you guys for reassuring me, you can still hear me, I promise, get a post-it note. I know this is an ongoing problem, and I feel really bad, so, yeah, press S to spit on Robert E. Lee. Like right there. Yeah, like just go to your gravesite and spit on that. We know what the Second Civil War would be like. Yes, don't forget the Second Civil War. And question: Bering found my channel and left 2 comments. Should I be doing a bedroom feminist video? Oh God, yeah. Oh, is Bering still trolling for content? He's like a stalker on a dating site. He's always looking for a certain type. He's got a type, and it's usually someone smaller and weaker that he can misrepresent and bully. So on the happy hour, we were gonna do a look at Bering video, but we just ran out of time because cognitive thought couldn't pronounce Confucius. Oh, that was really funny. But as for that, yeah, it's very possible that you're going to end up in a Bering video now, because he's like Sargon. He's not smart. So his content is parasitic in nature. His content is always about reinterpreting facts into a victim narrative wherein he is or people like him are the victims, or to straw man an enemy to avoid having an actual intellectual engagement, and instead to misrepresent them for entertainment purposes. Kind of like the Gary Edwards, but not nearly as bad. I mean, Gary is well read and articulate and can reason, but just for some reason he doesn't go to that next level, or at least he doesn't do it on YouTube. And Bering doesn't even have that mental capacity. So So in terms of it, if you have any other if you have any other problems with Bearing, message me and I'll give you advice privately. Bearing was in Owen's live chat. Oh my god. That's like when Bearing goes to Owen, you mean Owen McDonald. He really does just like look for, he just spends time in like the corners of YouTube where you know, it's like when Coach Red Pill comes and hangs out in the happy hour. Dude, what are you doing here? don't you have better things to do than show up in my chat on the Sunday or show up in Kevin's chat? Like, we get like 100 viewers. What are you doing here? Andrew Yang is an entrepreneur who's running for president because he thinks we need to give everyone UBI. Oh, well, you know, this is a part of the problem with the presidential process in the United States. Literally anyone can run for president. So, cool video. What do I think of Hugo and Jake? So I used to like their content back in the day, the Bible Reloaded, and they went total skeptic shitlord. They hosted Sargon of Akkad on their channel, and for me, the break with Hugo and Jake came when they were talking about bringing on Milo Yiannopoulos onto their channel. Now, this was before he was exposed as with the views that he holds on when children can consent to sex, but it was also when he was being an asshole. So it wasn't like those comments were, I think, were out there but not known as well, and he was being horrible to, you know, people in Hollywood. You know, Leslie, what's her name? I can't remember now, but he was a shit person. And at that point, they had also had Steve Shives on their channel for a couple things and gotten along. But once they started hanging around, they had a whole bunch of just like gross dudes, you know, with their chick tracks, doing guest spots, amazing atheist, and Sargon, or just two of the ones that I can recall, because this was years ago. But when they said they were actively trying to get Milo on their channel, Steve Shives went, "I'm done. Like, no, I'm not gonna deal with this. I'm not gonna be connected with people who are seeking out to promote Milo Yiannopoulos." And I was a Patreon supporter, actually, of Bible Reloaded, and when that came up and Steve went, oof, I was also like, I am not going to fund guys who are going to platform Milo. So I just told them nope, and then really didn't have anything to do with them. Then a couple months ago I was tagged into something with Hugo and mentioned his little flirtation with Milo Yiannopoulos, and he got very defensive, and then I tried to be nice back to him, but you know what Hugo did? What he did was he just took a completely defensive line, refused to accept any of the olive branches that I offered in the course of the discussion, and then started making dick jokes and trying to bait me into being offended into his dick jokes. So my view of Hugo is that he's a petulant child who thinks, look, if you're resorting to dick jokes in order to provoke women into a reaction, that says something about your character. You get what I mean? He was not having a discussion about his decision to bring Milo on and why it was wrong and what he learned from it moving forward. It was, how do I use a logical fallacy or an ad hom to distract from this and bait a feminist? So I have no respect for Hugo. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Jake, I have to take all that back. I have to take all that back about Hugo. That was not Hugo. It was Jake. Sorry. So let me just be clear, because it was a couple months ago and I was trying to remember how it all went. So my apologies. I've never interacted with Hugo. It's Jake. Jake was the one who did all of that. So to be clear, I'm sorry I got that wrong. Like I said, I think it happened around May of 2018. So it was many, many months ago. And I just slipped. So apologies, Hugo. We've never interacted. I have no idea what your thoughts are on me. I have nothing bad to say about you. But Jake's a dick. Okay. At least he was to me. He might be less of a dick to people who aren't openly feminist or who don't call him on his previous bullshit. Dave Pacman supports Andrew Yang. I don't give a shit what Dave Pacman thinks. So yeah, I basically expect that I will never really interact with Jake or Hugo because of Jake's behavior. I don't know which one is Jake anyway. Jake is, he's the guy, well, that behavior sounds more like Jake and Hugo. Yeah. And like I said, I completely apologize. It was not Hugo at all. I'm sorry. I retract all the times I said his name and put in Jake as a replacement. How do you explain the difference between Jake and Hugo? Jake's got a slightly more nasally voice. I don't know. But I used to follow their stuff. I used to contribute. I have a Bible Reloaded t-shirt somewhere that I got. So it just shows, the extent to which like the atheism community initially was united around religious critique, and then it started to split off. And of course they went right along with the shitlord stuff for a while. I am aware that they're doing a critique of Jordan Peterson. I don't know how that's going in terms of their audience. I mean, they had to eventually run out of the Bible. They got big on the Bible, and eventually they're going to finish it. So I guess, and I know that they're doing critiques of Jordan Peterson, and hey, good on them. Keep going. I think more critiques, a critique by Hugo and Jake of Jordan Peterson, or Jake and Hugo, Peterson will carry much more weight with their audience than if I do it. So in that way, I'm happy that they are using their content to put out critiques like that. So I don't begrudge them like their content or their show. I don't want to see them off air. I just think Jake acted like a dick to me and refused. One person even said, I couldn't believe this was Kristi Winters because she was being nice, because of course, their perception of me. And he agreed. So it's not like I was provocative initially because the Milo thing was a terrible decision. It was. And I wanted to bring that up. But after that, anyway. So Hugo's got the teeth thing going on. I haven't looked at them. I haven't watched their stuff in ages. I don't get why they'd platform all those people they claim to believe in pretty progressive stuff. So that's, I think you're talking about the Bible Reloaded guys, 250. Go back on their channel and you'll see that this was circa, 2004, 2005. And back then, initially the Amazing Atheist was seen as pretty progressive because he was in favor of legalizing marijuana and marriage equality. And that was enough to be considered a progressive about 10 years ago. But he never moved on from that. And he was never, I don't know. So yeah, they were looking to draw people to their channel. So they were connecting to anybody who was perceived as being in the skeptics. This was it. They were part of the skeptics genre in that sort of 2014, 2015, 16 time period. I'm pretty sure they had Armored Skeptic on. They had Logicked on one of their, they were really hanging with shitty people, really shitty anti-feminist, anti-progressive people to make fun of Jack Chick tracts. But of course, by putting on shitlords and anti-feminists on their channel, they were also, cross-mirroring that. They were bringing people who didn't know about Logic or didn't know about the Amazing Atheist. So really, do go back to their stuff from like 2015. They were tight, but this was also as the extent of, the Gamergate thing was going on, and they were moving more into the SJW critiques at the time. YouTube didn't exist in 2000. Did I mean 2014? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Oh, thank you for the 10 HK. Thank you. Have a good day for yourself. So yes, 2014, 2015. You can see Logic and Sargon and Armored Skeptic and the Amazing Atheist and all kinds of interesting people. I never knew they were shitlords though. Well, they definitely, then like I said, after, I don't know what they did after I stopped associating with them. And the next time I heard about Jake and Hugo, or Hugo and Jake and the Bible Reloaded, was when they started their Jordan Peterson thing last year. So there was a big gap of time where I just, I stopped supporting them on Patreon. I didn't watch their stuff anymore, and they just fell off my radar. So I don't know. And like I said, I don't want to smear Hugo at all. And I know that Jake gets along with Christiosity, so I have a feeling that Jake's, well, one, I did, like I said, I brought up the Milo thing because but after that he just sort of shut down and went, oh, bearing, doxing, narrative lies. And, you know, the fact is, if Jake is not in my life, I've lost nothing. I don't need to be his friend on Twitter. I don't care. They are probably the brogressives like TJ Kirk, Boogie, H3H3. Yeah, I mean, you can go back and look at their channel. Can't be offended. It takes a lot to offend me, especially when I know people are trying to. Hugo and Jake are brogressives. I would concur with that. Again, Hugo always seemed to me slightly more empathetic than Jake. Hugo was at least the one when I was watching was taking the lead on giving voice to supporting LGBT rights. And he also seemed slightly less hostile to feminism. Not that Jake was, but in terms of relative to the other people that they were hanging out with. Now, it could be wrong. It could just be lack of contact. But I always kind of felt like, yeah, Hugo was slightly more... His heart was closer to where mine was than Jake's. I remember this even as Steve at the time, and he convinced me to unsubscribe. Yeah, this is... When you start platforming Milo Yiannopoulos in order to get views, you're compromising your values a lot. The other day they said they were open to the idea of communism. Yeah, I mean, look, just because they don't get along with me doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people. So don't, like, the fact that I have beef with Jake, if you like Jake, that doesn't affect that at all. It's just the fact that I have nothing, I don't find him worth my time. But if you do, and you think that they're doing good content, like, don't let my opinion of them, you know, like, turn you off. Like I said, I think the Jordan Peterson stuff is good. Well, I mean, I watched part of it before I had the beef, before Jake and I had a fight on Twitter, and he started trying to use blowjobs as a way to insult me. And again, this is where my really biggest problem with him is that instead of actually having a conversation, he just wanted to say, oh, why don't you do this about a blowjob? And, oh, are you going to try to censor me talking about blowjobs? And, like, wow, I can't even believe I ever gave you money. How are you this childish? How old are you? Like, this is the best you can do, Jake? Really? Come on. Come on, up your game. Right. Leninist, yeah. Alright, so anyway, is it about 20 minutes after the hour? Because like I said, usually yeah, it's 18 minutes. It's about 20 minutes before when I said, okay, I'm going to wrap this up, and I did that at 14:03. And about 20 minutes after that, I actually end the show. Have they heard how you and Kevin interact, Kristi? I don't know. I don't know who they is in that case, and I don't know what they heard. Alright. Guys, thank you so much for showing up on a Sunday. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for putting up with my technical problems. I need a showrunner. This is what I need. Now, I understand now why Andy Worski is always looking for a co-host. It's a lot to do to run all of this by yourself, and I'm not complaining. I like hanging out with you guys. And clearly, I can talk for hours on end with not that much prompting, although your questions really do help keep me going. Although sometimes, like, I wonder if that's really what you're interested in. Like, really? But okay, if you ask, I will make an effort to answer. But thank you for being patient with my occasional technical mishaps. As I do this more often and it becomes second nature, turning the mic on and off, I might just have to think about not having the mic off. And if I go in the kitchen and I grind beans, y'all are just going to have to hear that. Maybe that's the solution. I don't know. What do you guys think? If you're still watching, and 37 of you are. By the way, can I just say to HK, thank you again for the 10 pounds. Very, very much. Thank you very much. It really, especially now with the podcast for the happy hour being an extra expense, that little contribution really, really, really does help offset those costs. So I was going to make a point, and now I've forgotten it. I really shouldn't go off on tangents like that. But I think it was about wrapping up. Oh, yeah, maybe I'll just leave on the background noise. I mean, we'll try that, and we'll see if it's really embarrassing. It's just that my thought was the quality of the stream would be better if I mute myself, and that way you don't hear me knocking around in the back. But if the problem is that I forget that I've muted myself, and then you don't hear 10 minutes of my talking until, thankfully, and this is also it, if it happens, message me on Facebook. Because you guys can't see this, but I'm using my mobile phone as my webcam. Yeah, you can do that. It's a thing you can do in OBS, which is awesome. So the reason I knew I couldn't hear myself was actually when some random geek messaged me and the pop-up showed up in my Facebook Messenger. And then it said, "You're muted," as the preview message. That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. So for those of you who, well, of course, and also, but Jonathan got up, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, so we can't count on him to always be the sound guy. But for those of you who are moderators, it's because you're my patron, most likely, and you should have my Facebook messaging. So if I do mess up big time again, you guys can message me directly on Facebook, and it will show up on my phone. So this is a little technical chat with mutual support. So this is what so our action items. This is what my life is like at work. So my action items for next week is, I'm gonna write this down now. We're gonna test out not muting. Not muting. And then what I can do to avoid some of the background noise is just shut my bedroom door. And that, like I said, the grinder is loud. It grinds the beans fresh, and then it makes like a lot of clicking noises as it moves stuff into the presser, and then the as it's steaming it. So, but we'll try it out. So next Sunday, and yeah, next time we'll see each other. Am I good? Yeah, I will be back. So between now, what's the date? Hold on, let me just check my calendar here quickly. All right, next Sunday is the 10th. All right, so Sunday the 10th, it's going to be a normal show as usual, and then that following week I'm going to be in Venice. But I will be back on the 16th, so we'll have another show on the 17th, and then boys and girls, my birthday is the 24th of February, which happens to be a Sunday. So we will end February with a Sunday Livestream birthday episode. And I will have to get the sound clip from Thor Ragnarok when they're in the party vessel. And Bruce Banner presses the button, hoping it's a gun, and instead it's my birthday. And with all the fireworks, I'll have to clip that little bit of sound and use that all day long. Alright, so we're testing out not muting stuff for next week. And there was one other thing. Oh yeah. Just remind people to use Facebook to message me with any problems. And then the last thing, yes, I did. I told you about this, the thing that's just sitting on my kitchen table, just calling to me. And I wanted to explain, well, you can already see here how beautiful Prague is from that. But I did see on the inside, they have even, sorry, turn it so the glare. That is a view of Prague. And that is a view of Prague. And it just, you're not even getting in the inside of the city. That's another view in Prague. The thing that's to me, the most wondrous about it is they've preserved the architecture over time. Like the buildings there go back centuries. And when living in Cologne, we just, like, the Allies bombed the shit out of us, like Nazi Germany, but like people in Cologne, the city got the shit bombed out of it because it had a strategically important bridge over the Rhine, and it's in the northern part, so it was easy for the Allied flights to get over, and as a consequence, we just had a lot of the buildings come from the 1950s. So to walk through Prague feels like going back in time. And I wanted to just share that with you. If you ever have a chance to go to Prague, say yes and enjoy it. Kristi is on Grindr. I am not on Grindr. I'm not on Grindr or on Tinder or any other social media thing. And I also, although I mentioned the existence of my family and the mentions of prior relationships, I don't talk about my private life generally except in little clips online. Because you know what I found out? If you don't talk about your shit, people don't talk about your shit. So, if you don't put stuff out there for people to talk about, people don't talk about it. And if I was on Grindr or Tinder, I would I would have already gotten tons of stuff. So no, I am not on Grindr. Prague is wonderful, a wonderful, beautiful place. Yes. Jim, you visited, you say, and you went to the museum. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's so much to do, so much to see. Just walking around it it's free to walk around Prague, and everywhere your eyes land, they'll see something. It's like, what did Carl Pilkington say once on one of his shows? It's like, my eyes are tired from looking. I can't take it all in. I think he said that when he was in India. I thought you were talking about grinding. Oh, grinding coffee. No, that's good. No, completely understandable when I'm complaining about my grinder. No, I get it now. I get it. Some random geek got it before me in the chat, but I twig now. No, I grind coffee. I'm not on Grindr. It wouldn't be the same without a mute incident. Yeah, if I didn't F up the sound at some point when everyone in chat just going muted, no sound. Really, would it be a Kristi Sunday stream? Must be on Grindr because of how good you and Kevin are buggering people. Occasionally you do a verbal takedown. And yeah, so that's the other thing too I want to mention. The happy hour, I think the balance, so I'm trying to push Kevin toward professionalism, which is a Sisyphean task. We make progress and we backslide now. He's gotten better, but there are certain things he's just kind of not resistant to, but I think we're getting a nice mix now, a flow of a little bit of YouTube drama and also our takes on news. And here's why I think it's important that we do cover the drama in the happy hour. One is, in terms of the news bit, it's great talking with Kevin. I always appreciate his takes, and we generally have a good time talking about politics. But in terms of YouTube drama, there isn't a show or a place, unless some people make videos, where you get a left-wing or a progressive take on what's happening on the right side of the sphere, critiques of the content that's coming out there. And so I think, we try, and also people who follow YouTube drama want us to talk about it, like they want to hear our takes or our reactions. So with a happy hour, I think it's going to be, depending on the week, but there's always going to be a little bit of YouTube drama so that we can give our left take and present it through a left perceptive, like our perception, like giving our interpretation of those facts and also things that aren't facts, and then also do follow up on news and whatever's happening. So we're, in terms of grinding, we're certainly trying to handing out some spankings, and so that's it. We're going to be a blend of dramas and a blend of news. Takedown, hell no, that was an evisceration. Kevin will never go properly professional. Yeah, someone in his comments says, why does Kristi have to, or why doesn't Kevin use his headphones every week? I asked myself that question. It's like every single week I have to remind him to use his headphones. Why? I'm gonna ask. So, but that's Kev. That's Kev. Bronx Bloggers covers the right, yes, from an anarchist perspective. So there are people who do it, but in a kind of talk show bantery format. You've got Worski Live, you've got Cognitive Thought, he does a show, Coach Red Pill. There's a lot of people out there who are giving their takes on news and other stuff. And also the kill stream gets mirrored on YouTube even though they're not still on here. So that content also makes it to YouTube. And maybe I'm missing out on some stuff, but I think the happy hour is really the only progressive show that routinely takes on YouTube dramas and pokes fun at them and looks at it from our perspective. And I do think we need to cover that content. So, and in particular, I saw Bruce Bartlett. Hello, Brucey. But I saw you in the chat being like, talk about news. And it was because I do read the chat afterwards. And it was at the end of the happy hour. And if you go back, and I was doing the timestamps as I was going along, so I saw your comment. I was like, Bruce, we've just done like 45 minutes of straight news. You came in late. Go back, and we go through this story and that story and that story. So that was another thing I'm trying to do, the timestamps on the happy hour, so that it's a little bit easier to find the content. But honestly, it's just time. Oh, and the podcast, yes. The podcast for the happy hour went up yesterday. I said I was going to leave like 10 minutes ago. I should just not say it because I'm such a liar. I don't mean to lie. I do intend to log off, but then just things come up and I end up not doing it. So, in terms of Podbean, our show, can I get to our show from? Yeah, the one is up already. I can't be bothered. No, I don't want to allow any of it. So this is by the way, if you don't know, we have an account on Podbean. Let me just move this over a little bit so you can see it more in the window. You can go and subscribe to us on Podbean, and then you'll get notification when the Happy Hour podcast comes up. And the last ones I didn't have a chance to mix the audio because I was just so far behind. I was 4 episodes behind, so I just converted it directly from the video version into an audio capture of that and uploaded it. On this one though, I took out the N-word. I edited that in such a way that you get but not the rest of it, and also I balanced it out a bit better because after Kevin did the Kraut video, his audio was different because he moved his mic into a different spot than in the first part of the show. And so that I had to even that out, so I did a massive equalization and compression. So anyway, that is up and ready if you want to listen to the show as a podcast. So also, I'm trying to get better about advertising this stuff because it's work. So this is part of the professionalization, is actually just showing you guys the stuff that we do, the stuff we do for you. All right, Utah Outcasts. Also, yes, love them. Go watch Utah Outcasts. I want to try to get yes, I'll save that, but I'm working a connection and I need to find the time to talk to one of the hosts. Bruce, yeah, drama bores you, but you can see our point. Yeah, we have to just mix up the audience. Just like, one, we follow it anyway, but 2, there's other people who are interested in our takes or who want to hear an alternative to what's going on, and YouTube drama, yeah, it's just like not really covered anywhere else in that kind of consistent once a week or twice a week show. So that I did want to acknowledge, I saw that and I was like, these are the moments when I saw that, Bruce, when you were typing that. That's when I wish I could be live in the chat going, no, just go back, just scrub back through the feed. But thanks for acknowledging that. So I adore Bruce, and so I do take on his points and listen to him. Yes, I do mean Felicia. I'm trying to snag an interview with Felicia. Yes, you busted me. We've talked about it on Twitter, and then I've utterly failed to follow up with her. So, all right. Now I'm really going to get going. We've done 2.5 hours. That is more than enough. No, I really enjoy talking with you guys, and that's why I find it hard to wrap it up. But I will be back next Sunday. I have absolutely no idea when the next happy hour is. I have no plans, but you can follow me on Twitter. I'm snarky. I'm a snarky bitch on Twitter routinely. You can follow that. Not everything, but often enough. And I'm sure there's going to be a happy hour. I'd imagine probably earlier in the week rather than later. We'll have to see. But until next time, you guys, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for sharing your Sunday morning or your Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening with me. I hope it was a nice, gentle background sound, or if you're watching live. So, I've been Kristi. People in the chat, y'all are awesome. People watching in the future, y'all are awesome too. And we'll see you later. And this is where I hit the stop streaming button. So I'm going to do that now. Okay. Bye.